And to counter that the Philippines is coming up with those reproduction of those imaginative to paint China as a bad guy, I don't think that is actually the real scenario in the West Philippine Sea. Those media journalists from from other countries who are also having that independent editorial story will be the witnesses to tell who's telling a lie and who's fabricating their own narratives.
Yes, I think even government, as I have said, they don't always know what happened. So sometimes they do make some mistakes. But I think the government should be very cautious to release the information.
The topic for today is disinformation. As you know, I have been mentioning this a lot of times. The greatest challenge of the Philippine government in our fight for our sovereignty and sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea is not the big Coast Guard vessels from the People's Republic of China or the Chinese Coast Guard, but because of disinformation and fake news and malign influence. This is actually a video showing China Coast Guard using military-grade laser against a 44-meter Philippine Coast Guard vessel patrolling in Ayon Shoal way back in February of 2023. This is actually the first story that what we publicized to expose the Chinese aggressive action. The military-grade laser actually resulted to temporary blindness of our Coast Guard sailor for 10 to 15 seconds. A day after we released this, the Chinese embassy here in Manila had a press conference, and then they said, this video is actually not accurate because that laser that they're using is just an ordinary laser pointer. This is the second video that I'm presenting, is actually the Chinese maritime militia, more than 220 of them, that are just doing nothing within our own exclusive economic zone. The justification of the Chinese government is that they are just there to be safe for bad weather condition. But as you are aware, you can see from the video, it is a very fine weather, and the Chinese are occupying our exclusive economic zone. This is another video from Second Thomas Shoal last year when the Chinese Coast Guard decided to become pirates, bringing knives, pikes, axes, attacking our Philippine Navy as they carried out a legitimate and routine resupply mission on board BRP Sierra Madre. There's another video showing how reckless and unprofessional the Chinese Coast Guard are when they rammed intentionally and collided with a Philippine Coast Guard vessel while it was anchored in Escoda Shoal. These are the aerial video that I got personally from my iPhone when we flew at Mischief Reef and Subi Reef. You have heard a lot of times that the Chinese are not militarizing these reclaimed islands, but as you can see from the structures that they have constructed, obviously, these are military-grade infrastructure to accommodate military assets, from jet fighters to PLA Navy warships. All of this are there and falls within our own exclusive economic zone as well. And for the other fake news that the Chinese are doing, they always say that they are just passing through, exercising freedom of navigation within our own exclusive economic zone. But as a matter of fact, all of these Chinese research vessels are conducting unauthorized and illegal marine scientific research within our own exclusive economic zone. This is another interesting video showing how professional, as they claim, the Chinese PLA Navy pilot getting close and blatantly ignores the rules-based order. Let me also take this opportunity to thank Ray Powell, because even if other countries in Southeast Asia would choose to be silent with what they so-called quiet diplomacy in covering up all those aggressive actions and unlawful activities of the People's Republic of China, you can just follow the Twitter account of Ray Powell, and you will see that the Chinese aggression is not just happening within the Philippine waters. Thank you.
And I think the Rear Admiral Jiang has shared the perspective of Philippines on the incidents happened in the South China Sea. I think China definitely has its own perspective on the same incidents. So I think for the Chinese perspective, it is law enforcement activities. So it is China's claimed waters. So China has the right to patrol and do the law enforcement activities. And also, but today, I don't want to debate with Jiang and not. I just share the information. As far as I know, China's Coast Guard doesn't have so-called laser weapons. So that's totally fake news. So-called laser weapons of the PC of China Coast Guard. My point today is about the maritime domain awareness, the relationship between maritime domain awareness and the relationship between MDA and disinformation. MDA is difficult because human being usually is not living at sea. So, and we are short of sensors and platforms to observe activities, especially man-made activities in the maritime domain. So even capable as the US and China, they couldn't always know what happened at the sea. And also different countries has different perspective and different positions. Even on the same incidents, they have different stories and narrative. So it's because of differences in national interests and stances, information released by each country regarding maritime incidents may be incomplete and biased. Different actors of governments, academia, think tanks, and media play different roles in MDA. So today, we just examine different actors of governments, academia, and media, their limitations and roles in the MDA. Governments possess powerful state apparatus and comprehensive surveillance and investigation capabilities, and can verify the truth and facts through information from different sources. Usually, the information released is authoritative, albeit one-sided and biased. Different governments typically only publish facts that are favorable to themselves. It is common that they have different interpretations and narratives even on the same incident. So it makes sense Beijing and Manila have different interpretations and narratives on even the same incidents. However, the governments will not release rumors and fake news that are clearly not true out of consideration for national reputation. Governments typically release information with caution. Therefore, I found it very difficult to understand the information released by the Philippine government on many occasions. For instance, in December of 2022, the Philippines accused that China has made the land reclamation at the Western Reef, and also in In the earlier of last year, the Philippine government accused that China made the land recommendation at Sambila shore. You know, land recommendation is a big event. How can China make land recommendation correctly? And the Philippine governments, you have all kinds of forces. You have vessels. You have aircraft. Why not just send them to have a look? So I couldn't understand, actually. The second type of actors, the academia and think tanks. Academia usually focus on some specific area. Their strength lies in the in-depth analyzing of some particular issue, but lacks the ability to perceive the whole picture, especially on-site situation information. With the development of big data and artificial intelligence, open source intelligence information has been significant growth. Academia think tanks can access data and information that was previously only available to governments and militaries. Ever since 2019, SSPI has used big data and AI to do some interdisciplinary researches and share the data of military activities and fishing vessels to the world. We will seldom interact with Jane and other colleagues here on X. Well, most of the time, we only publish the facts we have without any comments. This type of work supplements government data and information in related countries to some degree, helping the academic to do the research. Well, I should say, this kind of work cannot represent information released by the government, and the richness and accuracy of open and commercial data cannot be compared with the work of the governments. Anyway, we don't have vessels and aircraft and couldn't do on-site verification. Media plays an important role in dissemination of information and information sharing. There is strength of media outlets and big ways in social media lies in their connection to the grassroots and their ability to influence the public. However, their narrative and reports are often incorrect, exaggerated, and full of speculation. The situation in the South China Sea is intense, but it is nowhere near as extreme as many media outlets have described. And compared with other regions, I think the situation of the South China Sea is not too bad. This kind of shortcoming is determined by the nature of media. Journalists and reporters don't consistently focus on maritime issues such as South China Sea and just follow the hotspot. They can only passively obtain information from the government and academia, and they need to consider the public attention and usually the media like making big news. As to the South China Sea, international media are too focusing on China, while ignoring the operations and actions of the other claimants, states like Philippines and Vietnam. Everything involved China is big news. On the contrary, nothing happened. I have communicated with my media friends on this unbalanced situation, and their answer is very simple and identical, because China is a great power. So in conclusion, I think the cross-validation and on different perspective of information and the balanced narrative are crucial and important for our current understanding of the situation and countering disinformation in the South China Sea and other maritime domain. Finally, I think the MDA is not just data of the warships and aircrafts, but also the intentions analyzing. I think I have no intention to offend, but I think the current Philippines views and views on China and China's policy on South China Sea are full of speculation, suspicion, and imagination. So today we are in a world of in an interacted world. Action means reaction. So it is a circle. So that's why I said I have a suggestion to the Philippines yesterday on that don't give China chances anymore. Because as far as I know, Beijing doesn't have any specific plan in the South China Sea. We are just in the position of response. So if the more challenges, more opportunities for Beijing. So Beijing's policy has never been changed. The Beijing has shared a lot of incidents happened, but for the China's perspective, we have our saying that we are protect our sovereignty and the maritime rights. So when you are making decision makings in the process of decision makings, you can protect your sovereignty and maritime rights, but you should also consider the reaction and the concern of other side. So as PI and I would like to give favor to the Philippines. If you like, we can help you to better understand China's position and the policy of the South China Sea. I think we have a better position compared with you to understand China's intentions. Thanks. I should stop here.
Because I'm very confident to respond to this, because for the Philippine government, I wouldn't believe that we are publishing untrue statement, or as what Dr. Hu said, fabricated videos to support our claim. We do that because we partner with the media, local and international media. You know, when we first did the transparency effort, it was only the Philippine Coast Guard was documenting all these incidents. And the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, ended up with their own line saying that the Philippines is using propaganda to paint the People's Republic of China negatively to the eyes of the international community. So we made a calibration. We embedded journalists and not just relying on our crew to document all this. And then they again came up with another excuse saying that the Philippines is making use of their own nationalist journalists. So we made another calibration. We embedded international media from Japan, Australia, Germany, France, United States, all of those countries who would be willing to document all this. Let me highlight the fact that the Philippines is not an authoritarian state. We are a democratic country. We respect freedom of the press. We respect freedom of expression. And to counter that the Philippines is coming up with those reproduction of those imaginative to paint China as a bad guy, I don't think that is actually the real scenario in the West Philippine Sea. Those media journalists from from other countries were also having that independent editorial story will be the witnesses to tell who's telling a lie and who's fabricating their own narratives.
Yes, I think even government, as I have said, they don't always know what happened. So sometimes they do make some mistakes. But I think the government should be very cautious to release the information. So that's my point, is that when you face very clear truths and facts, such as the land reclamation at the Wilson Reef and Sambila Reef, it is totally wrong. It's very easy to verify whether it is or not. So, Jen mentioned the video. Even video have different angles. You have videos, China have videos. So, I think for third parties, we need to combine to analyzing based on different statements from related parties and different information released by different parties. Then we maybe have much balanced and accurate analyzing of the situation. To a situation of the rule-based of international water or international law-based of water, yes, in China, we prefer to say international-based of water because rule, what kind of rule? Which rule? The rule is not certain, so we prefer to use the term of international-based of water. But even international law, different countries have different interpretations. So there are some ambiguity. That's true. Thanks.
I have a question for Dr. Hubo. You mentioned in your presentation that the Philippines should stop giving Beijing chances. And based on your job and your work at the South China Sea Probing Institute at the Peking University, the role of your organization is to promote peace and stability and practical cooperation through studies that you conduct in the South China Sea. And one of the findings of your organization is that the Philippines should stop provoking China because these provocations are leading to tensions. So, given the findings of your organization, my question is, the intention of the Philippines in Scarborough Shoal has always been to support our fishermen. And are you saying, therefore, that we should start supporting our fishermen who go to Scarborough Shoal so that there will be no incidents that will lead to tensions in the West Philippine Sea? That's my first question. My second question is that you mentioned about third-party validation of actions in the West Philippine Sea. And in your presentation, you said even governments can make mistakes. So the premise is the Philippine government makes mistakes, the Chinese government makes mistakes, and when we release information to the public, it cannot be trusted because it is in accordance with the national interest. Therefore, would it be possible, would China agree to third-party validation? Meaning, would you, because we in the Philippines already allow third-party media to board our ships in conducting missions in the West Philippine Sea, would you think the Chinese government would allow third-party media also to board your ships? If you don't like CNN or BBC or Western media, perhaps Singapore media, like CNA, or Malaysian media, would China be willing to do that? We will allow them in our ships, you will allow them in your ships, and then let them make the discovery to the world in accordance with transparency. Thank you.
First of all, I want to emphasize that South China Sea dispute is very complicated, and we have claimants have complicated and different claims. So we have to be cautious that I think in our lifetime, maybe next generations and next generations, we couldn't say the final resolution of the disputes. But we can manage the situation. And the dialogue definitely is very important. Even this kind of dialogue, China is the target, but I think it's also valuable for exchange information, ideas, and points. And also, even between China and the Philippines, in the last 3 years of conflicts, China and the Philippines also use the diplomatic channel to calm down the situation of Second Thomas Shoal and Sambila Shoal. So we should encourage this kind of operations and diplomacy. And as to the China's policy on the South China Sea, I'm always talking that China's policy has never been changed. I think consistent ever since 1990s of Deng Xiaoping's doctrine of sharing disputes. And now I think China's policy also wants to keep in the status quo. So why China is so serious on Philippines is because I think that the Philippines show an intention to occupy new uninhabited features such as Sambila Shoal, Sandy Cay, and also the Philippines interference, the Taiwan questions, I think is the bottom line of China. So that makes the situation much complicated. And as to the publicity, I think actually China's public are not satisfied with our government's policy on the South China Sea. The public thinks that China's operations are too soft. Even we are so powerful, but we are too soft. So my point is that China is always keeping self-restraint. If without China's self-restraint, I think there are no peace and stability of the South China Sea. China values the stability and the peace of the South China Sea and Southeast Asia, I think, very highly. You will see the statements, you will see the leaders' voice and views. I think it's very clear. We want to have the peace and the stability of the South China Sea. We want to keep the status quo, but we couldn't accept the new northeast. If any party wants to change China, so for instance, wants to occupy new uninhabited features, I think China has no choice but to respond. So if the publicity, so I don't think that if China publish the information as the Philippines did, as the Philippines does, as to the South China Sea incidents, I think there are no peace between China and the Philippines. I'm very frankly. So my final point is about the disinformation. So we have a different claims, different understanding, and different perspective on the South China Sea, on the specific features. So it's common, it makes sense that we have different ideas on that, we have different interpretations on that. This is not disinformation. The disinformation is that, but we should communicate, we should criticize each other based on truth and facts. Thanks, I should stop here.
Second question about the crisis management. How the battle of narrative affect the crisis management between the Philippines and the People's Republic of China? You know, first of all, I wouldn't agree when people say it's just a battle of narrative between the Philippines and the People's Republic of China as to what is happening in the West Philippine Sea. Because it is not just about narrative. It is a fight or a battle between what is factual and what is propaganda. Dr. Chusha mentioned a while ago that in order for us to check on the factual information, we need to partner with media, the civil society, the academic. All of this we have already carried out. We partnered with media, not just our local but even international. We have allowed them to be boarded on our vessels for them to witness and tell the story to the world firsthand about the Chinese aggression. So it's not a battle of narrative. It's a battle between the lies and the truthful actions that the Chinese government is doing in the West Philippine Sea. Thank you.